reading from the New Testament is from John chapter 14, verses 8 through 17. And where is my magnifying glass? Philip said to him, Lord, show us the Father, and we will be satisfied. Jesus said to him, have I been with you all this time, Philip, and you still do not know me? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? Do you not believe that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me? The words that I say to you, I do not speak on my own, but the Father who dwells in me does his works. Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. But if you do not, then believe me because of the works themselves. Very truly, I will also do the works that I do. In fact, will do greater works than these, because I am going to the Father. I will do whatever you ask me in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If in my name you ask me for anything, I will do it. If you love me, you will keep my commandments, and I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to be with you forever. This is the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it neither sees him nor knows him. You know him because he abides with you, and he will be in you. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So one of my favorite recent movies is called The Prestige. This is a movie about two magicians. Oops, sorry. That's the reason for the topic of the children's sermon this morning. The movie is about two magicians, Mr. Borden, a very gifted illusionist, but a poor showman, and Mr. Angier, a charismatic showman, but an unimaginative illusionist. There are numerous things in this movie that I enjoy watching. First of all, interesting magic tricks or illusions. Boy, there are a lot of them, and how they do those tricks, I don't know. I have no idea. There's also interesting lore about Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla. These are two of my favorite inventors. Tesla plays strongly in the plot of the movie, as I will explain in a little bit. And the Edison-Tesla rivalry is mentioned. A look behind the scenes at illusion engineering. That's another thing that is very interesting, to see how some of these illusions are engineered. The next is a bitter rivalry between former partners, Mr. Borden and Mr. Angier. And the final thing is a shocking surprise ending. You always want to have a shocking surprise ending in a movie. Now, this is interesting. In the first scene of the movie, picture this. The camera pans slowly through a wooded area. Dozens of black silk top hats are scattered on the ground among the trees. Shocking and out of place in their presence. In the woods, silk top hats, like they'd just come out of the store. A voiceover asks the question, are you watching closely? The lilting articulation suggests a bit of chiding, perhaps making fun of the viewer, suggesting the viewer is not really watching closely at all, suggesting that the viewer is not even watching. Wow. In that scene, a lot is given away about the plot of the movie. So this isn't a new thing, this business about in the first scene you give away the plot of the movie. I have been watching The Outer Limits 1963 version. I've been watching some of the episodes. And the first scene before the intro of we control your television set, we control the vertical, we control the horizontal. Before that intro, a significant scene is plucked out of the middle of the episode for the viewer to ponder. It doesn't mean much to the viewer. clearly because they haven't seen the rest of the episode. Well, the same is true in the case of The Prestige. A lot of important details about the story are given away in that short first scene. The penultimate illusion, the transported man, is given away in that first scene. The illusionist disappears from one place and reappears somewhere else. That is the penultimate illusion that these two magicians or illusionists try to create on stage. Mr. Borden makes use of his twin brother to create this illusion. And Mr. Angier, on the other hand, uses technology. He uses a machine that's invented by Mr. Tesla to create a similar illusion. The next thing that is given away in that first scene is the fatal flaw of Mr. Angier's illusion as created by Mr. Tesla. So Mr. Tesla's machine duplicates rather than simply transports. So Mr. Tesla is repeatedly trying to get his machine to transport a silk top hat. But his frustration when the top hat stays in the machine and doesn't go anywhere, so he keeps trying it over and over and over again, trying the machine to make this transportation happen. What he doesn't know is that a duplicate is being created by the machine outside his lab in the woods. So every time he tries to make the top hat transport, a duplicate is created in the woods. There's a bit of science fiction here. You have to work with it. So in Mr. Angier's onstage performance, if he uses Mr. Tesla's machine, what do you do with the extra Mr. Angier when you do the act on stage and one is transported, another one is created and stays in the platform of the machine? So you have an extra Mr. Angier every time you do the trick. So we sympathize with the first-time viewer of the movie. Am I watching closely? I still don't get what I'm watching. The viewer does not know the whole story, the whole plot. Once the movie is watched through, the viewer will get the significance of the first scene and the chiding question, are you watching closely? Perhaps we can begin to sympathize with the people in the Bible readings for this morning for acting the way they did. They didn't know the whole plot. First, let's look at the passage from Exodus. Okay, the Israelites are walking through the wilderness towards the promised land. This is Exodus 32, 1 through 6. It's a familiar passage, very familiar passage. Moses goes up the mountain to speak to God. He was gone for 40 days and 40 nights. Now, I'll have to admit, that was a long time. The people got restless, decided to create their own God. Aaron complied because he wanted to keep the peace. When Moses went back down from the mountain, discovered what was going on, God showed his displeasure in the verses following our reading. In verse 10, God says, "Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them, that I may destroy them." God was not happy. Okay. Moses likewise showed his displeasure. In anger, he smashed the tablets that were carved by God. Wow. He burned the golden calf, ground it to dust, and sprinkled it on the water, and made the Israelites drink it. Wow. Verse 20. That was verse 20. I'm sure he was frustrated that the people seemed to be blind to what God had done for them so far. Were they watching closely? Okay, so let's think of other examples of God's intervention that the people forgot. Okay, how about the 10 plagues of Egypt in Exodus 7 through 11? What about the pillar of cloud and fire as guides by day and night, respectively, indicating God's presence? That's Exodus 13, verse 21. What about the parting of the Red Sea during the escape from Egypt? That's Exodus 14, verse 16. What about providing good drinking water in the desert where none existed or it was not drinkable? That's Exodus 15, 23, and Exodus 17, 6. How about providing manna and quail to eat? That's Exodus 16, 13 through 14. So Peggy likes to say, show me the tablets. Show me the tablets. How do I determine if God is present and what he wants me to do? So the Israelites saw the tablets. They had the receipts, so to speak. They were handed the receipts. Boom, there you are. What clearer proof of God's presence is necessary? So even with the signs of God's presence and support, the Israelites grew restless. We sympathize with Moses' anger and frustration. We sympathize with God's anger. Our chiding question comes to mind. Are you watching closely? Maybe a bit of incredulity as well in that the way we ask that question. Well, let's look at the passage from John. Have a similar thing going on there. This is an example of someone who has witnessed part of the plot, but still does not understand. Philip asks, Lord, show us the Father, and that will be enough for us. We may be tempted to criticize Philip for his lack of understanding. Per the commentator Ellicott, Philip was one of the first called disciples, so he should have been most familiar with Jesus' work on earth. Philip occupied a prominent position among the disciples because of his time with Jesus. He was a witness to Jesus' earthly activities, obviously. Yet he still didn't understand. We are tempted to ask in a chiding voice, are you watching closely? All the things that Philip should have been watching firsthand, but didn't see. So Jesus replies, don't you know me, Philip, even after I have been among you for such a long time? The equivalent of Jesus asking, are you watching closely? Perhaps, weren't you watching closely? In that reply, we hear Jesus' frustration. Again, per Ellicott, a tone of sadness and warning. Sadness that Jesus' holiness and greatness go unrecognized, that his representation of God is questioned. And regret at the close of Jesus' life, those closest to him did not even know what the work and purpose of that life had been. Perhaps a warning to all Christian teachers, workers, and thinkers. You speak, but you still don't truly understand. Jesus goes on, believe me when I say that I am in the Father and the Father is in me, or at least believe on the evidence of the works themselves. So Jesus offers a choice. Option 1, believe what I say. Well, why would they do that? Jesus has earned trust and respect of those around him. He demonstrated his integrity in all the things that he did. He attracted large crowds to hear him speak and to witness his miracles. But still, there is doubt. So Jesus gives option 2. Option 2 is believe the evidence that you have witnessed with your own eyes. The disciples had already witnessed Jesus' miracles. They had heard Jesus speak of his love for and understanding of God, his Father. Jesus then reveals a bit more of the plot in subsequent verses. Jesus goes on in verse 19, before long the world will not see me anymore, but you will see me. Because I live in you, you will also live. Per Barnes notes, the men of the world would not see him visibly, and they had not the eye of faith to discern him. Isn't that interesting? The eye of faith. The crucifixion was upon Jesus the very next day. The disciples should have gained their eye of faith by following Jesus during his life among them. Jesus is continuing to remind the disciples of what is coming, to use their eyes of witness to participate in the events of Jesus' life. Jesus promises the disciples that they will not be left alone. They will have the Holy Spirit to guide them after he is gone. They will continue to do the work and will do even greater things. At that point, the disciples still just didn't know the whole story. So, all right. In the movie, knowing the plot helps us understand the significance of the first scene. We know why the hats are in the woods. We know what that the movie is about illusions. We are encouraged to watch closely, to guess the method of the illusions presented in the movie, to wait for the shocking surprise ending. In the life of Jesus, the disciples didn't know the plot, or at least didn't know the whole plot. They were participating in an unfolding story. They didn't grasp the significance of what was going on in their lives. They were puzzled about some of the things that Jesus said and did, even though they were eyewitnesses. In the life of Jesus, we know the plot, or a good part of it. We have seen enough of the movie, to know what is going on. We have the eye of faith, or should have the eye of faith. And that eye of faith is gained by knowledge of the outcome of the story. Reading the Bible about Jesus' resurrection. Understanding Jesus' words in the context of the whole story. We have the presence of the Holy Spirit. That's probably the biggest thing. As promised by Jesus in verses 15 through 17, to guide us even though he is not present. Jesus' work continues through us even after he is gone. Are we using our eyes of faith to watch closely what the Holy Spirit is doing in our lives, in the lives of others, in the life of our church? Or are we like Philip? Not really seeing. Not truly understanding how God is working in our lives. Seeing, but not believing. Are you watching closely? So let us join together in the affirmation of faith.